Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse by Jason and Breshears, as read by Kevin Stevens, also known as Grendel Dark. Archive 1. Introduction to Chronological Isometrics. The horror comes in reality from the mathematical aspect of the event. No code of ethics are justifiable a priori in the face of the cruel mathematics that command our condition. Albert Camus. In 1973, the World Trade Center towers were completed in New York City. At that time, standing 110 stories each, they were the tallest buildings in the world. On February 21st of the same year, an Israeli jet shot down a Libyan passenger jet, killing 103 people. These two events would appear to be unconnected, occurring in opposite hemispheres, to be separated in both time and space. The destruction of the World Trade Center towers in 2001, popularly remembered as 9/11, is a day not easily erased from the minds of Americans. It is the one day in our collective past that each and every one of us today knows exactly what we were doing on that dark day. In the complex geometrical matrix of our lives, we know today precisely the time and location of our experiences as 9/11 occurred. But was this a predictable event? Is there a correlation between the World Trade Center destruction and the destruction of a Libyan passenger jet 28 years earlier? Is there a definite method by which anyone could predict a future event? Could it be possible that the future of anything is hewn from its history? The answer to all of these questions is yes. What you are going to read in this book will change your life. Like stopping to read a very important monument along the side of the road, this book will change your path. For once the human mind is stretched by a new idea, it can never go back to its original dimensions. In order to fully comprehend how truly easy it is for one to see the future, we must understand the findings of some of the greatest minds that ever lived. Albert Einstein believed that time itself was a geometrical concept. This world-famous physicist said, "The future is every whit as necessary and determined as the past," and that people like us, who believe in physics, know that the distinctions between the past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Einstein's opinion was not dissimilar from other great scientific minds. The Russian physicist P.D. Ouspensky, in the early 20th century, in his epic work Tertium Organum, wrote, "Future events are wholly contained in preceding ones, and if we could know the force and direction of all events which have happened up to the present moment, i.e., if we knew all the past, by this we could know all of the future." He too believed that time was a geometrical construction embedded within the human psyche. He further wrote, "The past and future are existing simultaneously on the lines perpendicular to our plane, and the past is identical with the future because phenomena come from both sides and go in both directions." If this is true, then this concept must be demonstrated. If demonstration can be replicated many times, then a fundamental aspect of our existence has been discovered. If the phenomenon of an event is moving in two directions in time and space at the same time, then we can perceive our space-time structure as acting similar to the ripples on the surface of a pool of water. An event happening right now in the present would correspond to the epicenter of a concentric pattern of waverings rippling the surface of the pool after a drop of water fell upon the smooth surface. The ripples traveling to the left would symbolize past events, while those moving towards the right were future occurrences. No matter how far the ripples travel, they will always be equidistant from the epicenter of the ring formation. Each wavering is the same distance from the center as the corresponding wavering on the other side of the pool. If this thesis is to be demonstrated and explained, then we need to apply fixed terms to the particulars of this phenomenon. For our purposes here, the drop event that creates the space-time structure wave rings, that issue out in both directions, past and future, is the center of the entire pattern. Thus is the isometric epicenter. The word isometric denotes something that goes in both directions at the same time, and in this case, we are referring to timelines, wave rings. The epicenter is any event in history that one would want to know the future of. The future of an event is represented by the wave rings that travel to the right. But as these are merely the geometrical reflections of the same events that travel to the left, past, then to understand the future events, we must compare them with those that are equidistant from the isometric epicenter. For example, the third wave ring to the right, future, is a reflection of the third wave ring to the left, past, the fourth or 17th, and so on. This is an isometric projection, the comparative analysis of an observer, historian, or prophet, of two events, one in the past and one in the future, both connected to a central event geometrically. This is cylindrical isometrics. We take for our isometric epicenter the year 1973. This was the beginning, foundation, of the timelines involving the city of New York, passenger jets destroyed, and the World Trade Center towers. As we have stated, these buildings in New York were the tallest towers in the world. The Israelis shot down a Libyan passenger jet, killing 103 people. In retrospect, we know that passenger jets were used to destroy the World Trade Center towers in 2001, and this was 28 years after the World Trade Center was completed. We may never know the truth as to why the Israelis shot down the Libyan jet, but we do know that Libya is a thriving terrorist base of operations and sanctuary. Now, 2001 is 28 wave rings from 1973, it being the future, 2001, that unfolded after 1973. Studying its geometrical reflection of 28 wave rings, or years, prior to 1973, we come to the year 1945, and to a most remarkable and little remembered event in American history that was never mentioned by the media during the 9/11 episode. In 1945, a U.S. B-25 bomber, piloted by Lieutenant Colonel William Smith, crashed right into the 78th to 79th floors of the tallest building in the world, the Empire State Building in New York City. The pilot was flying through low fog clouds and lost his bearings. The space-time reflection is hauntingly precise. It was United Airlines Flight 175 that slammed into the South Tower's 79th and 80th floors, a wing even striking the 78th floor, according to David Icke in Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center disaster. This is a modern-day example of cylindrical isometrics. Had an observer been aware of this little-remembered event in 1945, when considering the completion of the World Trade Center towers in 1973 as the tallest buildings on Earth in that year, superseded in 1974 by other towers, then this person could have conducted an isometric projection that would have revealed the year 2001 as a terrible day in New York among its skyscrapers. The end of anything is always connected to its beginning. Over 18 centuries ago, this was recognized by Origen in De Principiis when he wrote, "For the end is always like the beginning." Every event of every second in space and time is geometrically connected isometrically to both past and future times and events. By analogy, our space-time structure is like this same pool of water, but instead of a single drop disturbing the smooth surface into a pattern of ever-growing rings, every fraction of our own existence is permeated with wave ripples from countless events, from countless times, that create interference patterns that slightly alter the future wave rings, or events, so that they never quite mirror exactly their past counterparts, or wave rings. This is why there are slight deviations and that no future event can totally replicate a similar event in the past. But the phenomenon is real. It is demonstrable, and the ancients understood the concept. To continue with our analogy, the fabric of reality is this pool of water, as it would appear as thousands of raindrops slammed into an already rippling surface, forming patterns within patterns. The ripples, or events, do not hinder one another as they transect. They flow through one another. The space-time interface of multiple timelines, all operating simultaneously, is the cause for the effect we erroneously refer to as coincidence. Our predecessors believed that the knowledge of the future was accessible by the study of the past. A golden inscription discovered in the famous tomb of King Tutankhamun of Egypt reads, "I have seen the past, I know the future." King Esarhaddon of Assyria in the 7th century BC left behind an inscribed tablet saying, "The future shall be like the past." King Jedediah, better known to history as Solomon, who ruled the United Kingdom of Israel and Judah, wrote, "That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been, and God requireth that which is past." In more recent antiquity, we find this belief unchanged. In the apocryphal Gospel of Thomas, we find Jesus saying, "Have you then deciphered the beginning, that you ask about the end? For where the beginning is, there shall be an end. Blessed is the man who reaches the beginning. He will know the end." About 3 centuries later, the Jewish rabbi Hillel III wrote, "After having viewed our present condition, it may be for us to look back and review our former history and get a knowledge of the state of the world in former times." From that same period, the Christian writer Augustine of Hippo, in City of God, wrote, "The things which then were hidden are now sufficiently revealed by the actual events which have followed." Because the phenomenon of the passage of events through the space-time structure has the quality of being isometric, traveling both into the past and future simultaneously, scholars 5 centuries ago, like Firmicus Maternus, could declare that the beginning of anything was to be found out by the unfolding of historical events. More contemporary philosophers and historians have not deviated from this tenet. In his Discourses, Niccolò Machiavelli made 2 statements that capture our attention. If one examines with diligence the past, it is easy to foresee the future. Then he goes on to remark, "He who would foresee what has to be should reflect on what has been, for everything that happens in the world at any time has a genuine resemblance to what happened in ancient times." Machiavelli had conducted extensive researches on the history of Europe to produce his more famous works known as The Prince and The Art of War. There are few men alive that can boast of having read and researched more on our world's ancient beliefs and histories than Gerald Massey, author of the huge volumes entitled Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, and The Natural Genesis. These monstrous volumes are packed with historical, anthropological, and mythological data. Massey's lectures from the 1880s were published, and in them he made these statements. "The past is a region to explore. It is impossible to understand the present without the profoundest knowledge of the past. And our past deeds must and will make our future fate." A contemporary of Massey was the occultist Franz Hartmann, who in 1888 published a work on magic. Hartmann perceived that the entire universe is made up of matter that vibrates at different frequencies, which gives various materials the densities they have. This is now a known fact about all physical objects concerning this illusory world that still mystifies the quantum physicist. The number of vibrations at a given interval is what identifies something from something else. What interests us here is that Hartmann wrote, "If everything has a certain number of vibrations, and if these vibrations increase or diminish at a certain ratio and in regular periods, a knowledge of these numbers will enable us to predict a future event." Oswald Spengler, in his famous The Decline of the West, commented that the most valuable thing in the classical mathematic is its proposition that number is the essence of all things perceptible to the senses. Calendrical isometrics is the science of the future. Instead of counting vibrations, the historian or prophet counts years as his numbers, which are represented by the waverings upon the surface of the pool. A very relevant statement was uttered in 1902 AD by Judge Thomas Troward when he said, "The more deeply we investigate the world we live in, the more clear it must become to us that all our science is the translation into words or numerical symbols of that order which already exists. Numbers serve as the alphabet in this method of analyzing history and the future. But it is the backward and forward isometric timelines that construct sentences out of these numerical letters we employ, and multiple isometric projections all linked to the same year form for us entire paragraphs, pages, and even a whole book of knowledge about a future event." There are so many isometric timelines ending on 2040 AD and others ending on 2046 AD that the reader will be astounded when finishing this book. Never again will you see the past or the future in the same light, and many readers will be offended that they were raised on institutions of learning that actually served to impede their understanding of the past so they could not accurately see beyond the now. The famous critical thinker, René Descartes, wrote, "It were far better to never think of investigating truth at all, than to do so without a method." Our method is to study what occurred during certain years. When they reveal certain isometric patterns, we are offered a window into the past, to preceding events that molded the conditions in time and space for the other events that followed. Through the study of calendrical isometrics, we can see more clearly who we are and where we came from, two requirements necessary when considering where we are going. Our present blindness is partially because we have been duped by historians and chronologists over and over again into accepting that any particular calendar is in itself important, that the artificial phenomenon of mechanical time governs our existence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The historian Lewis Mumford summed it up perfectly in his monumental work entitled Technics and Civilization, when he wrote, "Time is measured not by the calendar, but by the events that occupy it." History is the surface of our pool of water. Through its surface, a plane, it has depth, and the spatial dimensions to accompany an infinitude of timelines. Innumerous drops of water, or events, rain onto the pool, creating countless patterns, or timelines. Some even intersecting one another, but still remain a part of their own inertia, as they flow through myriads of other times and places. Oswald Spengler contributes to this analogy, writing, "Over the expanse of the water pass the endless uniform ripples of the generations. Here and there, bright shafts of light broaden out. Everywhere dancing flashes confuse and disturb the clear mirror, changing, sparkling, vanishing. These are what we call the clans, tribes, peoples, races, which unify a series of generations within this or that limited area of the historical surface. But over this surface, too, the great cultures accomplish their majestic wave cycles. They appear suddenly, swell in splendid lines, flatten again and vanish, and the face of the waters is once more a sleeping waste. Many, many timelines can all be connected to the same year, or wavering, as will now be shown. Although 1973 AD was the epicentral year in our study of the World Trade Center, this does not in any way restrict 1973 from being part of other isometric projections. Many events occurred in 1973, and for every single individual event, there are isometric projections because this phenomenon is the motive force that builds our everyday reality. At 20 miles per second, our planet flows through space, orbiting the sun, while we flow through an incomprehensibly vast space-time structure virtually saturated with unseen events in motion. Current events are the space-time reflections of future phenomena not yet passed through. In the year 1054 AD, the entire world witnessed a stunningly heavenly sight when a star exploded in the Crab Nebula and the nova brightened the night skies. In the same year, Pope Leo IX of the Roman papacy excommunicated the Patriarch of Constantinople, which resulted in a great rift between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Church of Rome, which ruled the Vatican. This division embroiled all the nations of Europe, initiating feuds and wars. Christianity emerged directly out of the roots of Judaism and the older Israelite scriptures. The two elements of 1054 that grab our attention are religious division and war. With 1054 now, our epicentral date, we now examine 1973 a little more closely. The most widely televised and internationally recognized events transpiring in 1973 was the Islamic invasion of Israel in the amazing Yom Kippur War, again involving the elements of religion and war involving Jews instead of Christians. Muslims were also involved in the 2001 destruction of the World Trade Center towers. The 1973 Yom Kippur War saw Israel up against incredible odds and vastly outnumbered and surrounded. Yet, to the world's astonishment, the Israelis defended themselves and beat back their enemies. This occurred 919 years after the 1054 epicentral year, and counting 919 years before the epicentral year of 1054 AD, we arrive at the tragic date of 135 AD, when Judea was surrounded by the Romans, terribly outmatched and outnumbered, and Jerusalem was sieged. This was the Bar Kokhba rebellion against Rome, meaning son of a star. The Jews were crushed, their city taken apart and destroyed, and the survivors were crucified and sold into the slave markets of the Mediterranean. Both the beginning and the end of the isometric projection found the Jews badly outnumbered and at war with foreign peoples. The circumstances the same, with only the outcomes differing. There are so many easily shown isometric projections throughout history that this author is preparing an entire book full of them. That every future is an echo of its past is demonstrated by this peculiar forward and backward trait embedded within the geometrical framework of history. Could it be possible that some men are influenced by a future that exists in space, but has not yet transpired in time? Every second we spend in the present, we are held together by an infinite amount of pasts, as well as futures. We, as humans, are virtually trapped at the intersect point between two infinities. If the future did not yet exist somewhere, then we could not exist either. The space-time sequence of events is moored to something, be it a property of our collective psyche or an internal mind, if there is a difference. Somewhere, the future exists in space, though unrealized in time. This was the belief 1,500 years ago of Archaix and of Hippo, who wrote, "Where did those who sang prophecies see these events if they do not yet exist? To see what has no existence is possible, and those who narrate past history would surely not be telling a true story if they did not discern events by their soul's insight. If the past were non-existent, it could not be discerned at all. Therefore, both future and past exist. And because it exists, interwoven into the matrix of the present and past, it is accessible. Our minds are open to every impression that touches us as we flow through our environments. We traverse our lives through a medium of innumerable contacts, immersed in an uncountable multitude of places that remain non-local, because physically we can only experience one time at a time. For this reason, we are sometimes overcome with a sensation that we already know something that we also know we have never learned, that we had seen or experienced something before, though we have no memory of it, or the feeling that we are being watched takes over us, that we have performed certain acts exactly the same way we had done them in the unremembered past. The sensations of déjà vu, occurrences of retrocognition, synchronicity, and coincidence are reminders that the world around us that we perceive through the agency of our limited senses is far greater in depth than we are able to grasp. That prophets had foretold many recorded events long prior to their unfolding in the human drama is well attested in the literature of nations around the world, spanning back centuries and even millennia. What has not been known is how they do it. We are given the answer that these men and women were touched by the divine, and this may be so. We are created beings, and incidentally, encoded within our own biological programs, are precise geometrical informations. There appears to be a direct connection between our external space-time structured existence in material reality and our internal genetic geometrical DNA structure. The forward and backward property expounded upon in this work concerning historical timelines is scientifically referred to as palindrome. This is a sequence of numbers that count both forward and backward from an epicentral point. Intriguingly, it has been discovered that much of our DNA is structured in the form of palindromes, as yet undeciphered sentences that read both forward and backward, mystifying the geneticists. In fact, perhaps as much as 95% of our DNA remains undeciphered, according to Saul Luckman in Conscious Healing. If this is the foundation of our body, in the microscopic realm in which our psyche inhabits, then naturally, this is also a property of the universe that we are suspended within. The macrocosm merely reflects the microcosm. Isometric projections are real and measurable in the outer world of experiences because they reflect the inner world of man. Isometric projections demonstrate that 1. A system of historical analysis is available by which Nostradamus could have based his prophecies. 2. A review of isometric projections proves the dates of Nostradamus. The prophecies of Nostradamus are so detailed specific concerning the return of planet Phoenix that the reader must be familiar somewhat about Phoenix and what happened to the Earth in former times when it passed closely by. The next chapter reviews this history, which is more fully detailed in When the Sun Darkens. However, because this author has found so much more new evidence in support of the Phoenix chronology, he has avoided reciting those already well-documented points in his prior book. This chapter unveils all the new Phoenix-related discoveries and data, information that no doubt Nostradamus also had access to. Interestingly, Nostradamus wrote that his own method of divining the future was by looking into a pool of water. Was this a clever hint?